Your job is to work for your people. Being off script means to realize that everything is not going to have an SOP. Everything is not going to be a cookie cutter solution. And a lot of times you got to think outside of the box, because part of leadership is knowing who your people are individually. I seen her smile. When I got promoted to captain, one of the speech that I gave to in front of everyone was the power of a mother's smile, right? But to kind of take it back from there, right? The power of my mother's smile was what drove me to continued success.
I know who you are as a person. You're very humble. You are sarcastic. You like to have fun, but just that is a monumental thing and a very successful thing to do. And I just want to give you massive praise for that.
Do you ever feel like you are leading from a place that just isn't you? Perhaps trying to fit a mold or lead to someone else's expectations. Well, if you feel that way and you're ready to lead from a place of authenticity, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Josh Fisher, and this is Off Script, a leadership podcast for people who don't like leadership podcasts. So here we are. Let's go.
Welcome back, Off Scripters. I get the beautiful chance and opportunity to hook up and talk to my boy, what I call Frankie Dee, but his name is Frank Davis. And I jokingly called him Frankie Dee one day and it stuck. I don't think anybody else in his life calls him that, but I call him that. So Frank is joining me today. Mad respect for this dude. Very successful, very polished, and post his retirement out of the Marine Corps, which, by the way, he spent, I think, 26 years, he said, in the Marine Corps, and literally experienced all ranks, from enlisted to warrant officer to the commissioned officer ranks. So it's a pleasure having Frank here. Frank, welcome. Good to have you, man. Good to see your beautiful face. And I'm excited about the podcast, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Like I said, before this, it's my day's been going really good, and it's better now that I get to see and talk with you, man.
Yeah. Catch me up, dude. Tell me how you been.
Been doing good. So I'll tell you, retirement, never looked back. When I retired from the Marine Corps, 26 years, as you stated, never looked back. It was a beautiful retirement ceremony. It was on the, if you're familiar with San Diego, California, it's on the USS Midway on the flight deck. And to, if you know me, I'm about flair and all that. So that's where I also decided to propose to my fiance, Valor, and she said yes. If she didn't say yes, she was going to be swimming back. I'm just joking, but from there, just navigating through transition,
Yeah, dude. Congratulations on the engagement.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your fiance not being thrown in the shark-infested waters. I guess that's good, right?
Yeah.
That's news to me, man. So congratulations on that. And dude, I'm excited to have you here. You're a dapper dude. You are flashy, but this is off script, man. Let's have fun with this conversation. Let's enjoy this time together, man. One of the questions I ask the guests straight off the bat is, looking at the title of the podcast, what I'm trying to do is challenge the status quo, challenge the image of what a leader is, what a leader, I guess, what society expects leaders to be, to talk like, to act like, right? So the big question that I ask, that I want to know from your perspective, when you hear that terminology or that phrase off script, what comes to mind, man?
Off script. So that question, rings in my mind, and what does that mean to me? I think it's very relevant in, what our profession was in the military, where a lot of things were scripted, right? So leadership was definitely scripted, and there was a certain tone and approach of how you led until you kind of matured to a level to where you realize, okay, I'm a leader in my own right. I'm a leader with my own personality. So, how do I mold myself, learning from the leaders that are around me, taking the good and the bad and formulating to what that will be as who I am as a leader. Off script means to me is is when you're addressing different things, leadership, first of all, to me is a position of servitude, right? So, the more people that you're in charge of, the more you're in a position of servitude. If you're not doing something to enhance or give the right tools or the right information training to whoever it is you're leading, then you're not being a leader. Your job is to work for your people. Being off script means to realize that everything is not going to have an SOP. Everything is not going to be a cookie cutter solution. And a lot of times you got to think outside of the box, because part of leadership is knowing who your people are individually. And you can't use the same script on every person, right? So off script to me is understanding the situation, understanding the person, and having the fortitude, thought, and experience and wisdom to approach each situation differently.
Yeah, man. I like that. You said a few things I'm going to latch on to. I'm going to save the second one because I think that's a huge question, and it's always going to be a question I ask because I really want to know. But the first thing is, you said, leadership is about servitude. It's about your people, 100%, right? And one thing that I used to say all the time, and probably still do say, especially when I do facilitation, I teach workshops, it's leadership is not about you, but it starts with you. And what I mean by that, leadership is not about you, right? It's about service of everybody else. It's about sacrificing who you are day in and day out to ensure the well-being of everybody that is under your charge, as the terminology that you use, but it starts with you, right? It's that self-leadership. And I think that's a real critical piece with leadership and this off-script mission. It starts with you. And if you're not leading off script, then you start to, I think, almost put out this perception of the way, maybe puts out a false perception or image that you have to be like this because you're scripted, if that makes sense, right? And it starts with you. So the other thing I latched on to was you said who you are. I want to know who Frank Davis is. And I don't mean the professional. I don't mean the 26 years in the Marine Corps. I mean, maybe behind closed doors, or the essence that embodies you as a person, as a human, as a man. Who are you? Tell me your story, brother.
So who am I as a man? So I will say this. I didn't even realize who I was as a man until I'd probably hit my mid-30s, right? And when that happened, now I could probably say in my mid-30s, I'm about to be 47, that I'm kind of like a teenager in manhood, right? So it's still a continuing growing process, right? And of learning who I am and understanding that there isn't going to be a aha moment where you figured it out and it's over and that's it. It's a continuous learning of myself as a man. I will say that what got me there, the experiences in my life, is what got me to that point in the realization. I mean, we are a sequence of our experiences. And I want to say the first thing that happened to me that really put me on that trajectory, on that path, was, to be a little personal, was the suicide of my brother, right? So, I can even talk about when I had joined the military, when my mom, as a teenager, as a young guy, my mom wasn't very proud of me. And rightfully so. I wasn't doing anything to make her proud of me as a young man. But when I joined the military, when I joined the Marine Corps, that was the first time I seen her smile, right? And when I got promoted to captain, one of the speech that I gave in front of everyone was the power of a mother's smile, right? But to kind of take it back from there, right? The power of my mother's smile was what drove me to continued success, right? Always trying to keep that.
Goosebumps when you said that, man. Full body goosebumps, man. Just that.
Yeah.
What was it again? You said the power of a mother's smile.
The power of a mother's smile. That was what.
Oh man, tell me.
Yeah, that's what got me going, and to keep that smile, right? So the power of the mother smile is to receive it. It was genuine. And then my mission was to keep that smile on her face, right? So when I go back to what I was telling you about my brother, me and my brother had joined the Marine Corps at the same time. He was a week behind me. And so we were MCRD San Diego together, but he was in second battalion, I was in third battalion. We joined the Marine Corps. I went to North Carolina, he went to Florida, and soon after he had gotten out the Marine Corps, he committed suicide. Up to this point, I was still, I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, and I was still really trying to find my way in the Marine Corps. Obviously I was in a, leadership position, but I was still, still trying to figure it out. And when I came home, that was a time and I took care of the situation. That was a moment where I stood up really as a man in the family. And instead of allowing my mother to have to deal with all of the, details of her, son, there's a lot of administrative things you have to do. I took the helm. I didn't, obviously I was grieving, I was hurt, but my number one mission was there was an issue here that was traumatic, hugely traumatic to my mother and my family. And I went headlong into it. And I took care of everything. All my family members had to do is show up at the point and place and time that I needed them to be there. But all of the details I took care of. And that really showed me, though, not thinking about it consciously in the moment. It was just, it came natural to me that, leadership, within the family, and it even carried over to who I was in leadership in the Marine Corps, of really, really being a kind of person that would shoulder, things so that other people that I love wouldn't have to deal with it.
It's probably not something you tell a lot of people about. I definitely didn't know about it, and you and I served for some time together. So I'm just curious, man. One, thank you for sharing that detail, that personal moment. I think what I understand is that, yeah, a lot of hardship, a lot of sadness, but that was sort of a pivotal moment in your life where you realized that there were responsibilities that you had to do as the man of the family. Is that a fair takeaway?
Yes, and I'd say one of the big highlights of that moment was when even my older brothers were really following my lead in the situation. And that really showed me that, that I did have this leadership ability in me. And that carried forward into the rest of my life. Like you said, who am I as a man? And part of me as being a man is I just, had this feeling and this notion of I'm here and I exist to make others' lives better. Because if you're in a position of authority or leadership, then to me, that is what leadership is. You are supposed to facilitate the betterment of others.
Yeah. Who was Frank before that?
He was.
And what I mean, and why you think about that is just, and what I mean, obviously, again, we kind of just identified that was a pivotal moment for you. Like, what was Frank like before that? Who was Frank before that? Childhood, teenage years.
The clown, right? Another thing I don't tell a lot of people is, in high school, I had to do my senior year twice because I was a clown. I would go to school and it was a social hour every period, of high school. At least once one of my teachers would, hey, you need to go, you just go outside, right? You just leave the classroom, because I was just that disruptive. And part of that was the reason why my mom was disappointed, because my grades were shit, right? Like, so I was a clown, and I guess that's the contrast, right? It was such a huge contrast of when of who I was, and I was identifying myself as through my teenage high school years to, something happening in my life that, to include joining the military, that showed me that this is not who you have to be. And this is not really who you are, but you can incorporate personality, right, into leadership. So I still can connect with people and make them laugh, but understanding the time and place, understanding responsibility, and being able to, compartmentalize, things in your life that are important, time and place, when and where.
Yeah. So you and I spoke a little bit before we started talking on the podcast here, and I told you that it's obvious. You look at me. I'm a white dude.
Mm-hmm.
I get labeled privileged, regardless of my experiences, my socioeconomic class, all those things. And to a certain extent, I am, right? I'm protected by the word privilege based on what I look like. And I want to know, and I really want to learn from your perspective, the challenges that you faced going into the Marine Corps and just being who you are, your race, your personality. What was that like? Share that with me. And I'm curious, like, did you ever feel that you had to be somebody that you weren't, if that makes sense? Right. So just share with me some of those. Teach me is what I'm saying. Let me understand what it's like to be you.
So I'm from California. I'm from San Diego. We're a very diverse, city. So for me, unlike a lot of places in the South or in the East Coast, where it's white and black, right? Like I grew up around, Mexican, Filipino, Vietnamese, black, white, and then you take all those and you mix them together because we're all together, right? So you had a mixture of people. Now, obviously, in any place that you are, that there are different type of people, there's going to be prejudices, right? And there's going to be people, and it goes all the way around. Prejudice and racism doesn't belong to one group of people, right? It doesn't just go one way. It certainly goes both ways. So I'll lead with this. One of my first little heartbreaks, you can say, I guess I was in middle school. I was talking to a girl, and she was white. And again, I never saw her as white. I just saw her as a girl that I liked. And we, back then, relationships consist of, you talk on the landline that we had in the house because there's no cell phone. And you stretch the phone wire around the corner to get as much privacy as you can until your mom either picked up on the other end.
Bro, you didn't have a cordless? Wireless, cordless?
Maybe we did upgrade, but at this
I know I didn't.
At this particular point, it was on a wire. And it consisted of us just talking on the phone. And one time I called her and she said, "Hey, we can't talk anymore. I can't talk with you anymore." I said, what happened? Like, I didn't treat you wrong. I didn't cheat on you or anything like that. And she said, "Because you're black." And I was like, what? For me, it was like, Martin Luther King, it felt like 1,000 years ago. Why is this an issue now? And I said, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Well, my mom found out that you were black, and she said, I can't talk with you anymore. I'm sorry." And, my little heart was crushed, and not only because I lost who I thought, a girl that I liked, but the reason, right? That was even worse. And I remember going to my mom immediately afterwards and saying, "Mom, if I brought a white girl home, would you be mad?" And she said, "Would you love her?" And I said, "Well, yes." And she goes, "Well, then what's the problem?" And that's exactly what I expected her response to be, right? So that was like my first time of actually feeling it directly. We'll fast forward to the Marine Corps. Now, by this time, I joined the Marine Corps, and let me take it back a little bit. So I go to boot camp, and I remember, here in the MCRD San Diego, I'm not sure if they do that on Parris Island, the easy one. And
Shots fired.
they
I got you.
we do this tour of the museum, the Marine Corps Museum, and you see all this history. And I don't see any representation of myself in this museum. And the curator of the museum, he's talking and asks, does anyone have any questions? And me, I raised my hand and said, well, when did Black people join the Marine Corps, or anybody that's different? And he gave me a bullshit answer of like, oh, you ever heard of freedmen? Well, freedmen, they joined the Marine, at the very beginning, just like everybody else. And I didn't know, so I didn't see them on the pictures. I didn't see them on the walls. So I took his answer, but I didn't believe it. Get to Camp Lejeune, and I remember I'm in formation, and our platoon sergeant says, hey, we have Mumford Point Marines that are going to be at Camp Johnson. So if you're interested in meeting Mumford Point Marines, just let me know, and we'll excuse you to go to Camp Johnson to meet them. I said, what the heck is a Mumford Point Marine? I don't remember. I don't remember it in boot camp, and if they did glaze over in boot camp, I probably was. Maybe I fell asleep. Boot camp, you try to get it in when you can, right? So hey, what's a Mumford Point Marine? Like, oh, those are the Marines that were segregated, right, from normal regular population of Marines, and their boot camp was on Camp Johnson at Mumford Point.
Camp Johnson.
Yeah.
Right? Completely two separate bases, 5-10 miles apart.
Exactly.
One's up north, Lejeune down south somewhere.
Yep.
But it was, like you said, it was a segregated boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tell me more, man.
So when they told me about these Marines, I was floored. One, that, I am now learning that the Marine Corps integrated not too long ago to the point that there was people still alive, that I could meet, that were still here. And two, I never heard about them. And these Marines, they went to World War II. They fought just like everyone else that we've learned, in boot camp, and they've done acts of valor, just like everyone else we learned in boot camp and in the daily. And I did not know about them. And so I remember going there. I'm going. So I went. And the sad part was there was more of them than Marines that went to go see them. So they would come, and I mean, they were excited to see us when it should have been the other way around. It should have been, the showing up of the young generation of living history should have been more than them, talking with us. So, I remember not long after that, I had made chief officer, and I was walking by the PX in Camp Lejeune, and it was a Mumford Point Marine, and he stopped me and he said, "You're a chief officer." I said, yes, sir. And he's like, "Thank you for doing that. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for." I said, "Oh, thank you. I mean, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have this opportunity. You blazed the trail in order for, allow this for me to happen." So as far as there are certain, issues that happen. I remember I was a heavy equipment mechanic. So most of the guys who are into heavy equipment, they come from, rural America. They come from Midwest. It's just natural. That's what they did at home. It was something familiar, so they, did the same thing in the Marine Corps. When I joined the Marine Corps, when they told me I was going to be an engineer, I didn't know that meant a diesel mechanic. And
When was the last time you touched an engine, right?
And I will say no. It was probably 2006. I made it all the way to staff sergeant in that MOS, but that certainly was not my forte. But I became good at it. I think life is about how you perceive things. I used to like to put together models, model cars, stuff. When I became a mechanic, I just viewed what I was doing as putting together huge models, right? And you take this heavy equipment that was you seen towed on the back of a flatbed, looked like it was hit by an IED, and then it was your responsibility to fix it and get it operational and back to its mission. And that was a very fulfilling thing for me. But I remember, I would walk into the maintenance bay and it's always country music, and some of the country music you would hear would be using, use the N-word, right? And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? But I mean, it was never like, I never felt personally oppressed or held back. I've always personally felt like I had the opportunity to succeed, in the Marine Corps based off of my merit. I will say that. So I don't know this stuff about merit based being an issue, because my experience has always been merit based. No one gave me anything. I didn't see anyone given anything per se. And if I was willing to put the effort in, my leadership, maybe I was fortunate, maybe others had different experiences, but when it came down to it, if I put in the effort, if I put in the time, things happen for me.
Mm-hmm. What were some of those lessons that you took from that younger experience? And how did you take those lessons and insert them into your leadership style the higher you got in rank, right? The Mumford points, how did you take those lessons and use them to create this culture of inclusion?
Just, it's funny. It sounds cliche, but, I never looked at color, right? Like when I seen a Marine, I mean, there's parts of us that you can't help, right? If you read if I read a newspaper and I hear Marine does X, I automatically think of a white guy, right? Like that's my first cookie cutter picture of a Marine is.
Because that's the script. That's the mold, right? You have this archetype burned into our head. Right. It's like Marine, white dude, chiseled jawline, right? Bald head gleaming off the sun, exactly. Whatever. I don't know. Sweat dripping down the face. Go ahead.
I mean, that's that is my first notion and thought. But because, like you said, it's kind of ingrained in us. But on a personal level, when I dealt with Marines, again, I always was merit based. Like if you were a Marine that performed, if you were someone that I can trust and depend on, and knew he was going to be a go-getter and get things done, that's what I focused on. That's how I led my Marines. And I always remembered how I felt if I felt like somebody looked at something other than my merit, right? And one of the things I used to tell as an officer, my staff NCOs would be, first of all, don't forget where you came from, right? Leadership should be, and true leadership should be, if you had bad leaders, be the leader that you wish you had. If you had good leaders, then obviously you emulate those parts that you liked about your leaders. But there's no excuse for being a bad leader, because if you experience bad leadership, you know how it feels to experience bad leadership. So why would you want to pay that forward, right? And to me, if you're the type of person that's paying that forward, then maybe was it really bad leadership that you were dealing with, or maybe it was you, right? Because maybe you were the problem and you just didn't see, or you couldn't conform to, the leadership that you had because you weren't disciplined, and you didn't, listen, or whatever the issue was. Maybe it wasn't bad leadership. Maybe it was you were the issue. So to me, if you were the type of person who, would play that forward, then it's, to me, you didn't have the mindset of wanting to learn and to be a good leader. You just are, you just weren't, you're probably that 10% that we talk about in the military.
What they say, you spend 90% of your time on 10%
yes,
of those Marines, those individuals, right?
That's absolutely true.
And what I see there is like lacking accountability in those individuals, and just pointing the finger and saying it's because of this leader, it's because of X, Y, Z, as opposed to let me turn that mirror back on me. Maybe I'm the issue. Maybe I'm the problem. And I like how you said, like, and I'm a paraphrase, but it's like basically if you see a leader and there's things you don't like about it, don't do those things. Right. And I used to jokingly say, you're going to 100%, you are going to learn something from it. More often than not, it's probably what not to do, but you are going to learn something from it. Hopefully you find a nugget in there that you can put into your leadership toolbox and use that. But that's the thing, right? It's like, there are great leaders out there, mediocre, terrible leaders, and we can learn from each and every one of those. We can learn what they do well at, and we want to mimic that, and then we can definitely learn more, just like we learn more in life about those adversities, those failures, those challenges. We learn from those things that don't make us feel good about X leader, and saying, I don't like the way that feels. I'm going to do my best not to do that. And you have to be very, very intentional with that. So a lot of great points there. I'm curious, how would you define your success in the Marine Corps in the sense of, like, what set you apart? Why did you achieve so much?
I would say, one, I never felt like I've achieved so much. That's just, when I tell people about my career path and their reaction is a little bit more than I would expect, because to me, I just personally don't feel that that's what it is. But I will say, when I was a very young Marine and I found out what a chief and officer was, I was very curious. And when I found out who they was, I at that moment said, that's what I want to be. So I think what it comes down to is setting goals, right? Looking at something and saying that's what you want to do. And then learning what are the steps that you need to do to get to those points, and then executing those steps. So for me, if you look at the full spectrum of it, yes, it seems impressive, but it was very methodical, right? It's a very methodical process that you do. So yeah, from, private to LDO captain is like a huge gap, right? But if you look at Chief Officer 3 to LDO captain, it's not, right? So because of that spectrum, I guess I never really felt the full gravity of what it looks like from an outside perspective. To me, it was always piece by piece by piece by piece, and maybe that's why I don't really feel like, oh, it's this huge, accomplishment.
They say it's a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, and that's basically how you sort of envision or think about your career. It wasn't you went from private to LDO captain. It was every day. It was, let me do the best that I possibly can. If I mess up, how do I kind of reset and continue that one step, right? And that's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think I can feel and understand what you're saying. And I'm going to relate a little bit, or in the coaching world, I'm going to identify a little bit. I grew up, like, my academic prowess was very subpar. Frank, I don't know if you know this about me. I never walked across the stage in high school. I think the Marine Corps worked some kind of deal with my high school and got me out of there. They were just like, let me take them off your hands. But I know that I got a 1.9 GPA coming out of high school. And I failed the ASVAB that I remember 3 different times.
Wow.
And finally, when I passed the ASVAB, it was high enough score to be an infantryman. And when I say a high enough score, it's basically, congratulations, you can join the Marine Corps. Good job. Like, you had no other option, right? So I came in probably academically slow, behind the power curve, and basically went from private and into the commissioning ranks as well. And I say that because, to me, similar to you, it's like, I just did what I had to do. I mean, to me, it was surprising that I was able to do those things. But when you talk about that outside perspective, when people look at that and say, regardless of knowing my background, but they say, man, you went from enlisted to commissioned officer, that is huge.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to inflate your ego and I'm going to praise you, because going from what you initially explained at the beginning of this podcast, let's just call it a less desirable childhood, distracted, doing things, right? To joining the Marine Corps, to hitting this pivotal moment of saying, I need to be a man, I need to do certain things, I need to be responsible, into a chief warrant officer position, and then doing the commissioning route. Like, that is a huge, huge monumental accomplishment.
Thank you.
And I know you're just being humble, which is one of the beautiful things that I enjoy about you. But I would say, think about that, man. It is huge, and be proud of that. And again, I know who you are as a person. You're very humble. You are sarcastic. You like to have fun, but just that is a monumental thing and a very successful thing to do. And I just want to give you massive praise for that. Dude.
Thank you, brother.
You were very successful, and that success in the Marine Corps. And one, I'm glad to hear that you personally didn't feel the challenges of having to fit in a certain mold or script to be successful, because you relied on your abilities. Yeah. But you were successful, and then you were able to take that sort of mindset into the civilian world. Remind me, when did you retire?
2023.
2023. So 2.5 years again. Academics were terrible, so forgive me.
About 2 years. Yeah.
I'm just trying to do quick math. I think that's about right. But now you take that mindset step by step, doing what Frank does best, and that's doing him, regardless of what people think. And now you are doing monumental things, what you and I call in the civilian world. What are you doing these days? I'll leave it at that. What are you doing these days, and how are you continuing that servitude?
Okay, thank you. So when I first retired out of the Marine Corps, I went into a very good position with the company. It was a medical life science company, and they brought me on as director of procurement. And, life was good. I felt like, wow, what's this transition everyone keeps complaining about? As soon as I joined the Marine Corps, I'm got this great position, great field, and let's go.
If you don't mind, I'm going to cut you off there. Just real quick, because I have to say it. Your perception or experiences of a lot of things is completely different than a lot of people. And what I mean by that, you said multiple times, I don't know what everybody's complaining about. I didn't have this, I didn't have that. Like, your transition was great. You're a blessed being, but I just want to call that out, man. Like, you're like, it was easy. I don't know what you're talking about. But continue, man, please.
Well, that was the beginning, right? So there is something to that. So when I was there for about a year, and I'll tell you, it was hectic. It was a company that was in the middle of an acquisition. They had projected revenue at a certain amount, and after a year, they didn't reach that amount. And I will tell you, there was a lot of processes and things that were going on, and for me, a lot of learning, right? Because procurement and a medical life science, FDA, manufacturing, different ISO regulations, FDA regulations that you have to meet. You have different clients. I was having to learn a lot of stuff, and I thought the military had acronyms. I was learning having to learn a whole bunch of new acronyms on the civilian side too, and in manufacturing. So, needless to say, about a year into it, they'd start laying a lot of people off, and because of my initial experience of retiring and getting into a good job, that was my expectation. So a year later, I'm still unemployed, right? So now I'm understanding what is this transition that people are complaining about, right? It's there's you're filling out applications, you have the qualifications, you have the education, you have the experience, and more so than anything, you have the leadership ability, right? And yet, nobody's bringing you on. And I understand it's not because there are so many jobs out there. I have a certain salary range that I, you know, uh, believe that I'm worth. And usually at that level, there's one of one, right? So you're kind of playing a lottery. You're looking at this one of one position and you have 100, 200 plus people who are applying for that position. Well, it's one of one. And, you can have a bunch of qualified people who are doing that, but you can't have that one on one and think that just because you didn't get it, that you are not qualified, that you're not good enough, but you can certainly have those feelings that happen when it doesn't happen. So, I got to a point where I'm grinding, I'm grinding, um, and I feel like I'm not getting any traction. So I decided, well, if I'm going to be grinding this hard, and I have this leadership, and I have this ability, and I have this education, and I have this experience, why not build something for myself, right? Stop begging other people to, bring me on to build their business or build their company. Why don't I just build it myself? And so earlier, I would go to the VA and I would see disabled veterans that are there, and their family members are taking them to their appointments. And I I asked one of the counselors, said, is transportation an issue for disabled veterans? She said, we could certainly use more transportation. So, it gave me a light bulb, and I said, well, that's a good business venture for me to look into. Not only am I still connected with the veteran community and giving to the veteran community and facilitating their needs, I can build a business around this, right? So that's where Red Valor Mobile LLC came to fruition. And I would tell you that the journey of building a business is scary, right? It's a roller coaster. There's some moments, and I'll say these emotions happen in one day. It's one moment you're feeling super motivated.
Probably happen every hour.
Exactly. I would agree with that. Depending on what you accomplished that day, you're feeling motivated, like, oh, this is going to work. This is going to be successful. I'm going to make an impact in the community. And then as you're grinding it out, you're like, man, do I really want to be dealing with all of this? Maybe it is better to shove at somebody's company, let them deal with all the operational stuff, and let me just focus on this one thing. But one thing I know for sure is, I have the ability to do this, and I would be remiss to let fear or doubt prevent me from accomplishing and building something that even can become a legacy for my family, right? And so Red Valor Mobile is a prestigious transportation company that it's an NEMT, which is non-emergency medical transport, right? So, we give ride to veterans to their appointments. But if veterans need ride to their appointments, that means they need rides other places, right? I didn't want to be engaged in the community just to give them rides to their clinic or the hospital, which is certainly important. But what is also important is that they can enjoy the freedoms that they gave their mind and bodies to, right? So, not only do I provide this prestigious red carpet, black SUV treatment that we see, A-listers in Hollywood get. We see, if you're in a city, you see all kinds of important people riding around them. Well, I believe that the people who sacrifice so much for this country, they're the A-listers, right? They're the important people. And, just because
the real heroes.
Yeah, exactly. There are heroes.
Not the social media heroes, not the people you see on TV, but the no kidding heroes, the ones that literally made the ultimate sacrifice, and literally some did make that ultimate sacrifice.
Absolutely. And everyone, I believe, the entertainment business has its place, and I'm, for one, entertained by them, but I believe that, and here's the thing. And the reason why a lot of people, as I'm building this business and I sit with business counselors, they bring me down to earth and some things, because if you're building a business and me, I'm thinking all the fluff and all this stuff. And they're like, well, do you really need, Mercedes Sprinters and black Cadillac Escalade transport when they're just, I said, well, yes, we do, right? Because that is what's showing the veterans that, we're giving them dignified transfer. I want them to have chauffeur type services. When we pick them up, they have beverages, they have snacks, they have, I want to hire veterans that can relate to them as drivers. So when they're picked up, they can have conversation with like-minded people and like experienced people, and here's another thing about the veteran community is, when you talk about Desert Storm, when you talk about, Vietnam, these are people that are the 55 plus now, right? These are the people who are needing this type of mobility. And I would love to be able to facilitate that. I would love to be able to partner with veteran organizations that have different events for veterans and being able to be their face of that organization and say, hey, when I dealt with X veteran organization as a veteran or disabled veteran, they picked us up in prestigious red carpet treatment. We did the event, which was phenomenal. And then they got us home in the same dignified, prestigious manner. There's different organizations like in San Diego where you have what's called like honor flights, right? Where they take disabled veterans, they fly them out of San Diego all around the country to DC to be able to experience the Capitol. A lot of these veterans fought for this country, have never been to the Capitol. And I would love to be that face of that organization and say, hey, look, not only did they fly us to DC, but we were treated like, A-listers throughout the whole process.
Yeah. Bro, you should do like a Red Valor tour bus. Take that thing across on a road trip. Stop at different monuments on the way.
Exactly.
Man.
I would love to see it definitely go outside of San Diego County, and definitely like to see that same treatment for all the veterans throughout the United States. But, we got to start somewhere. But I do really believe in what I'm doing here. And I believe, too, that as a veteran, not to knock any other NEMT type transportation, but there's a kind of a feeling of, they have on the side, old people, like a convalescent type of feel or a handicap feel, but none of that is bad at all. But I would also like to provide a discreet type of prestigious transportation for people who would want, who need this transportation, but would like to not necessarily be viewed as somebody that's, maybe a burden to society or those type of feelings that a person can get when it is kind of a known thing when they get into the vehicles.
Yeah. The veteran community is often a forgotten community. They're recognized and appreciated while they're in uniform, but once they transition out, whether it's 4 years or 26 years or 30 years, more often than not, they're kind of just forgotten about. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a beautiful thing that you're doing and recognizing them for that, and treating them accordingly for the sacrifices that they've let go of, or the sacrifices that they gave, but the freedoms that they relinquished while doing that. Right. So I think it's a beautiful thing. I'm curious, like, what are some of your leadership philosophies or things that you learned throughout your life in the military or wherever that you're bringing into this Red Valor organization?
I would say a sense of, I want people that, anybody who's going to be part of this organization, I want them to have a sense of duty, sense of ownership in what they're doing, right? And genuine leadership, right? I believe that as I build this company, that I'm going to be really focused on the team, right? And I think a lot of companies forget that, right? That, they have, their P&L statement and inventories, and people become just this, head count on a spreadsheet. And no matter how big or how small or medium that the company is, I want to bring genuine leadership to the company. I want them to have a sense of ownership in the company. I want them to have a sense of accomplishment. I welcome, great ideas. And if it's a well thought out idea, let's implement it, right? And so now
Mhm.
this idea that's being activated into the company is something that you brought to it, right? And I think that flow, in our client base, I think that's vitally important because that's going to flow into how the client feels about the service that we're providing to them. If it becomes like this robotic, hey, I'm just here to do a job, then the whole premise of this company is lost, right? Um, you know, I really believe that one of my key tenets in my leadership is just being a genuine leader. And how you be a genuine leader is just being a good human.
It's amazing how far that goes.
Mm-hmm.
Just being a good human, just being genuine, being authentic,
Mm-hmm.
being real, right? That's what this whole off script is about, man. Like, remove all that. Just be a good human. Be you. And I love the human focus or the people focus of your thought within Red Valor. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's people driven. Like, whether they're your team or they're the customer,
Mm-hmm.
it's people driven. And I think that's a beautiful thing, man. So kudos to you. And I don't know if you realize this. Frank, but I'm gonna call it out because it was an observation. You basically took the Marine Corps priorities and flipped them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that, the Marine Corps has two priorities: mission
Mm-hmm.
first, and what?
People.
And troop welfare, right? Mission accomplishment, troop welfare. And it took me, I would say, 10 to 12 years to finally say that's bogus. I get it. I understand it, right? Because we have a mission to do.
Right.
But it took me so long to have the courage to say, if we just focus on troop welfare first, like flip it around, the mission is going to happen organically. And more often than not, probably going to happen at a higher level of quality.
Right.
And more buy-in, right? And when I listen to what you said about Red Valor, that's basically what you're doing. Is if you're putting the people first, the people welfare, the mission of Red Valor is going to happen organically.
Mm-hmm. Right? Exactly.
And I don't know if you did that intentionally, but it was an observation that I had because it's something that I've thought about for so long, is that leadership, driving a business, being successful, whatever the case is, leading a team, if you put the people first, and if you are a genuine, honest person who is authentic, vulnerable, and isn't a polished individual, then that mission, the objective, the vision, all those things are gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that when I say that?
You're absolutely right. And here's the thing about what you said about, mission and then troop welfare, right? So I believe that concept only worked in one dynamic, right? So
Tell me more.
as a Marine and being the tip of the spear, that only worked in one dynamic, and that was in combat, right? Because in combat, when you have people who are leading Marines kicking down doors, troop welfare wouldn't allow the mission to get done, right? Because if we're always stopping, because if we know that we have Marines going to clear a building and we know for a fact we're going to lose some, right? Then that would impede that leader from moving forward in a mission if they were troop welfare first, right? Because you can't have troop welfare knowing, you can't say troop welfare first and then know that you're going to be putting them in harm's way. So in that dynamic, I understand what the Marine Corps was saying, but I think it's also important to understand that we have to be, its situation dictates, right? And understanding when those situations are. And again, I believe that in combat, in an actual combat environment, that is what has to happen. But when we're on our day-to-day garrison missions and if you're in a support position, then absolutely, maybe somebody might get a paper cut, or they bust their knuckle on a wrench like I did as a mechanic. But if in those aspects of support, yes, you put the day-to-day, the people first, the troop, the mission, and then you can deal with the troop welfare, because we're not talking about dire situations. right? But I believe in a dire situation when you have a mission that's going to put people in harm's way and you know it, you have to have that mindset.
Yeah, and I don't disagree, but I would like to add on to it in the sense of, yeah, if you're in a combat zone and you're literally dodging bullets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like mission first, you got a thing to do. And I think how I'm going to interpret what you said is that the Marine Corps in those moments intentionally has to say, we need to remove the human element because we have a job to do.
Mm.
In a sense that, like, if I'm so focused on the human element, the emotional element, I may not be able to execute what I need to be executing, which is the mission, the objective, whatever the case, right? Mm-hmm. And I agree with what you're saying. And maybe I'm going to add on to that by saying that if that troop welfare piece is just like everything you said, it's the garrison, it's the when they're not on patrol or when they're not in a convoy or whatnot, it's how are we maximizing troop welfare in the beginning, so that way we can go out and fully execute that mission to our full capacity and full ability, knowing that everybody is physically, mentally, and emotionally ready. Right. So it's focusing on that human element where we have the time, the capacity, and the situation allows us to do that.
Exactly.
Right. And I understand, like in the military, where it's a different world. It's a different world. Mm-hmm. For all the right reasons. I get that. But I just love the fact that you flipped the script on that and you didn't even know it, or maybe you did, but it's like, I'm going to focus heavily on my people. I'm going to focus heavily on the customer, which are the veterans. And if I do that, and if I'm following my dreams and I'm following my passion, and I don't get attached to the outcome, this thing will organically blossom into what you want it to be.
Right.
Right. Because you're doing what you love to do, and it's not making money, which is a nice thing. What you love to do, and from what I've learned from you, from knowing you and interacting with you, is serving others. Mm-hmm. That's sort of what how I perceive you, your premise or your foundational leadership trait is service. Mm-hmm. And you're carrying that from the Marine Corps into your civilian world. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, you're right. And I think, and we had discussed something earlier, and you're talking about how as we grow, get older as men in a certain phase in our life where we go from selfish type of dreams of self, worth or things, right? Things that we want, like cars and houses.
Yeah.
Everyone wants those nice things.
Materialistic
great,
things, right?
But those can be focused when you're young, like, right? Like I want, and especially in the United States and America, our success is a lot of times based on the tangible things that we have, right? But then later on in life, when you realize, there's like a switch in your mind where it goes to from how can I go from, going from, how much can I get to how much can I give, right? Mm-hmm. And you're spot on. I never even thought about that way, but I'm in that. Well, how much can I give? How can I not only make a living and take care of my family, but in doing so, I'm taking care of the community around me, right? So it's not this, this scavenger type of, trying to gather my own resources for myself, and more for me is less for you. It's what can I do so that we're all, quality of life is improved.
Yeah. And what you were referring to was our previous conversation prior to us starting this, and I referred to the book by David Brooks. Love the book. I always recommend it, but it's called The Second Mountain. Mm-hmm. Right. It's the first mountain of our life is very ego driven. Mm-hmm. It's flashy. It's I need the job. I need the money. I need the car. I need the house. All these things, and we get to this point in our lives where we realize those things are not the things that make us genuinely happy on the inside. Right. So our priority shift, speaking of like mission accomplishment and troop welfare, our priority shift into mission accomplishment of me to troop welfare in the sense of service. So that sort of ties right back into what you and I were talking about at the beginning, but we live our life differently during the second half more often than not, because we realize those things that we fought for or we wanted so badly are irrelevant to the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is true happiness, true joy, peace, knowing that you're doing the right things for the right reasons. And you embody that in everything that you're doing, even though you are flashy, you are bling, and I love it. You're a dapper, man. I love it. You're a beautiful dude.
I appreciate that.
And I don't know if you ever thought about it in this context. So it's just interesting how you're sort of living on this second mountain, or at least trying to ascend that second mountain right now. And it's wonderful to hear, man. You're doing a lot of great things. This is where I'm going to pause for a second. I'll edit this out because I had a question. I just forgot what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even know what it was, man. Lost the moment, but I'll cut all this out. I'll put a little clap here because what that does, it makes me think.
Yeah.
So essentially you're on that second mountain doing what you need to do. What's next for you, man?
Just to continue, to grow this, right? The personal satisfaction in this is, you talk to teenage Frank or young Frank, and I've never thought that I would, be starting a business, right? That just was not something that I thought that I would be able to achieve or even thought about, because, to think about it means that you think you can. I wouldn't even think about it, right? And I guess talking with you has put some things in perspective for me. One is when you talk about the whole thing about me going into the military and making it to, commissioned officer. When I joined the military, you couldn't tell me I was going to be an officer of any type, right? But it happened. And so now reflecting in my second chapter, and now that I'm at the beginning of this business, it's kind of like when you first join the military, you're trying to find your place. It's scary. You're trying to make a name for yourself, all that stuff, right? But I already have a path that I've traveled on that shows me that I certainly can get there because you've done it before. And my mom told me something to that same effect. And I was really worried about, not finding a job in my position. And she said, look at your life and everything that, if you look back on your life, have you ever gone backwards? Hasn't everything in your life been forward? And she goes, why would this be any different? Why would this be any different? And I took that and ran with it because she was absolutely right. Because you can get stuck in the moment, right? You get stuck in the moment. But when you look again, when you open the aperture and you try to look at the big picture, and my mom's like, look at your life pattern. Your life pattern has always been on a trajectory. And, even on my social media posts, I use that now. It's the trajectory. The trajectory continues. And that is what leads me to believe that this is going to be a very successful business, because I've always been on that trajectory. And I believe I'm on that trajectory for the right reasons.
I 100% agree. And something you said earlier fits what you're saying now, is that you never seen yourself or thought you would ever be a warrant officer, a commissioned officer. And I don't think that was your overall goal or vision for yourself going into the military.
Correct.
But and you didn't see sort of like this big picture of the accomplishment of it, or how monumental this thing was, because every day you just did what you had to do. And that was what we talked about earlier, was like one step at a time. And if I do this one thing for the right reason, eventually these monumental things, whether you have intentionality behind it or not, will happen. Mm-hmm. And that's how you're approaching this. It's like, you don't have this vision of being this billionaire with Red Valor. Mm-hmm. Did I say that correctly? Red Valor? Mm-hmm. I feel like it came out weird. You don't have a vision for being a billionaire with this thing. You have a vision with supporting the veteran community. Mm-hmm. And if that's your vision, that's your step each and every day, who knows where this is going to go. You just have to have the belief in yourself, and I know you do. And I'm going to go back, and I'm getting chill bumps thinking about this. And I think this is what's going to drive you each and every day here on out, and it's what you started this podcast with, was the power of a mother's smile.
Mm. Yeah.
Knowing that you're doing the right things for the right reason, your mother is going to smile upon you because she's proud of you, man. So beautiful. And I don't know if you've ever made that connection, but I'm getting goosebumps. I wrote it down again, the power of a mother's smile.
Yeah.
Like something about that just resonates. It's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that right there is what's driving you every day.
Absolutely. Like, her approval has always meant everything to me. And to continue, right? Like, I've always wanted to show her that I am continuing to keep that smile on her face. And again, it's the little guy in me, the little boy in me that was always disappointing her, and it's still wanting, her approval, which I certainly always get, right? And it's kind of like my dopamine now, right? It's continuing to get that from her continues to give me the strength and the motivation to do what I'm doing. I'm going to the University of San Diego for my dual degree of MBA and Master's of Supply Chain. And again, I'm 46 years old, and I'm giddy to tell my mom like I'm like a 17-year-old just graduating high school about how I got accepted to a university such as the University of San Diego. I'm always giving her, my updates on what I'm doing, and in the end, she's living her life. She's doing great, but when it comes time where she's can't necessarily take care of herself, I'm her retirement plan, right? And I say that because I remember her articulating to me one day that she was worried about her retirement plan. And I said, what are you worried about? And this was years ago. I said, what are you worried about that for? I'm your retirement plan. I'm your retirement plan. So live your life. Let me continue to build. And when you're ready, I'll be here.
You put the weight on your shoulders already. But it's worth it. Mm-hmm. And you should ask her something about the power of a sun smile. And let her know that she makes you smile every day.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
She does.
So it's been a great conversation, Frank. Tradition on the podcast, man. So I end every podcast with a journal prompt because I think it's important that if the listener makes it this far, I want to give them something to think about. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to put that power in you. You get to decide what that journal prompt is going to be. And then what I will do on Thursday, I will read my journal entry to the question that you share with our Off-Script community. Mm-hmm. So take your time, think about it. But what's a question you want people to think about?
That's a good question. It's a heavy question, and it does it does rate a lot of thought, right? Because you want if people are going to hear the question and take the time, because time is the most valuable commodity that we have. I think it has to be a well thought out question for someone to take the time out of their day and really think about. And in this day and age where we're living in right now, there's a lot of there's not a lot of loving our neighbor, right? Mm-hmm. And it kind of disappoints me because that is not what America's about. That's not what you and I fought for. Like, we fought for people to have the right to say how they feel, and I can appreciate whether I agree with them or not. But ultimately, we want a country that is united. It's in the title of our country. It's united. I don't mean united. Yes, it's the United States, but the states are the people, right? And I don't care what side of the spectrum of political spectrum they're from. I think we have blurred the lines between the human and the politics, right? So I guess my question
Yeah.
is, how do we, as people, love our neighbor again and still be able to have our freedom of thought? How do we do that?
Yeah. How do we love thy neighbor
Mm-hmm.
while still understanding and allowing for the freedom of thought, perspectives, beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially what you're saying, is that we are all different, literally, genetically, all these things. We are different people.
Mm-hmm.
We come from different walks of life, different belief systems, different values. How do we respect that and still love each other? It's a great question. I look forward to exploring that in my own journal, man. So, how do we love thy neighbor regardless of beliefs, values, background,
Mm-hmm.
ideologies, all those things, right? How do we love each other more? Which is interesting because this word love has appeared at the end of each episode so far.
Mm.
And that's not planned. This was not a planned question. But I really believe that if we genuinely love each other more, our world would be a much better place.
I agree, and the thing is, like, when we talk about the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated, right? It's so easy, but we've made it one of the most difficult things to do as humans.
Yeah. I modified that rule. I don't think I modified it. I think I heard it somewhere, but I modified it to the platinum rule, Frank.
Okay.
And I don't know where I heard this. Maybe I made it up. I don't know. I can't remember. We know the golden rule. Treat others like you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
The essence of it, right? The platinum rule, treat people the way they want to be treated. Because we don't want to be treated the same.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee I don't want to be treated the same way as you. Yes, if you look down at the brass tacks, we all want to be treated with courtesy, dignity, and respect. But if we think about it as leaders, as humans, if we treat people the way they want to be treated, not the way we want to be treated, then that forces us to engage, to understand, to communicate, to ask questions, to hear the perspective, and then in turn treat them accordingly.
That's spot on. Yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind when you said it. Was, if you really listen to what you say and you give it thought, the first thought you should have is, well, how does the other person want to be treated, right? And if you have that question in your mind, you're already starting on the journey of love, right? Like, I'm caring about that person because I'm taking a moment to stop and think about, well, how does that person want to be treated? And the only way you can know is to engage.
To engage, to communicate, to have conversation, man, to understand without judgment, but to learn. And that's why I asked that question at the very beginning of the conversation, man. Like, I'm a white dude. You're not. What are your challenges? Teach me. Let me understand that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can get blinded by that word privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate, but that's just how we're wired. So I'm thankful that you shared your story with me, shared your perspective, and really shared just about how you live your day to day. And it's really about service of others, man. It's a beautiful thing. Frank, I appreciate you. I appreciate you joining me today. I'm going to post the link for Red Valor Mobile in the show notes below. And I just encourage folks to get on, check it out, support Frank any way you can. And let's try to get this dude to be an international, veteran-oriented, red carpet service, because our veterans truly need that attention, that love, and that care. So all that will be in the show notes today. Frank, I appreciate you being here. Love spending time with you, and we should make it happen, dude.
Yeah, thank you. I'll put a disclaimer on the link. So we're not active, but I would definitely certainly want people to look at it and and see it and navigate through it. There is an email that is active on there, info@redvalor.com. If you have any ideas or something that makes sense, certainly send me an email and say, hey, if you did this might help. I'm open to all that. But hopefully we will be operational by the end of the year.
Yeah, I forgot. You're just starting this thing out, man. It's a new journey, new adventure for you. So let me verify that email. It's info@redvalor.com.
Mm-hmm.
That is active. They can see the website. Services aren't active yet. Email's active. If they see anything, have any ideas, they can reach out to info@redvalormobile.com. So I'll delete all that out. So just a reminder, Frank said he's just starting this journey out. The website, you can see it. Services aren't active, but you can email Frank at info@redvalormobile.com. And he's looking forward to hearing from you and your feedback. Tell him how he can do his business. And I'm sure he'll take any advice starting out a what I believe to be a phenomenal venture. So Frank, man, good seeing you. Thanks for being here, and continue to be off script, brother.
All right, thank you, Josh. Love you, man.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Love you too.